Welcome back to OpenLine. We are talking about movies on this cold winter night. We have with us film critic Jason Shahan, and several calls. Let's just go to the phones, then we're going to start talking about some of these Oscar movies.
Okay.
Let's go to Mike. Hello, Mike.
Good evening, guys. How are y'all doing up there?
Great. How are you?
Doing great. Hey, I'd like to ask Mr. Jason a question, if I may. It may be just far pitch out there, but I'd like to ask, is there any way they maybe could ever thought of maybe doing a movie about the homeless in Nashville? I work with them from my church on the weekends, and I actually God gave me an idea for a movie, maybe called it Home Safe for Jesus, like how the guy was a homeless person and he was found like in a ballpark, and a kid found him there and he fed the guy, and the guy made something of himself and changed his life. I just kind of feel like if we could somehow come out with a movie with the homeless in Nashville or all over the world, let people know that they don't necessarily need a handout. They just need a hand up. I mean, I work with them.
All right, well, let's talk about that. So I don't know if he's talking about a documentary or
yeah. I mean,
what do you think?
There are always people working on documentary stuff and nonfiction material, especially in terms of like working as an outreach program and stuff. But specifically. There's a whole cottage industry now of inspirational films. Some of them, working in explicitly religious contexts, but not all of them. And a lot of them do work in those kinds of stories about how that there are lots of possibilities open to people even who maybe necessarily have no hope. There's an amazing film that was made in Memphis, actually, with a lot of the local homeless population there, called The Poor and the Hungry, that was directed and written by a guy named Craig Brewer, who is famous now. He directed a movie called Hustle and Flow. He did the Black Snake Moan. He did the Footloose remake. I mean, he's an incredible director, but he got his start doing that sort of thing. And I feel like that there are so many stories that can be told with that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know specifically of anyone working on one right now, but I do know that there's always film students and stuff who are trying to learn nonfiction cinema, and who also have a need to try and help. Will work with that. We'll work with the rescue missions and such to try and get these stories told. And what's great are the contributor, which is an essential resource locally for letting people tell their own stories, and that's the key. I mean, it's you find a way to let people tell their own stories, and that's how you experience something that's different from just everything else that's out there.
Thank you for that answer. Let's go to Bob. Hello, Bob.
Hey, great program. And I'm concerned about since Disney took over Star Wars and stuff like that, they're killing off the characters now. I mean, that's one aspect, and the new Tarantino movie is pretty good. As
The Hateful Eight.
As I can see. I'm not quite sure what to say. The Afro Americans are needing some attention right now, but a lot of the older stars have been so how would I say risque or criminal.
All right, well, let's talk about a few of the things you've just brought up. All right, Star Wars and Disney.
Yeah,
that's a fascinating arrangement.
Well, yeah, I mean, Disney with the 1-2 punch of acquiring Marvel and Lucasfilm. They were already an economic powerhouse, and now they've just sort of established their hold. I mean, they control all the biggest sandboxes where our imaginations can go to play, and it's fascinating. I don't feel like, as far as some of the fates that await various characters in the films they do, I don't think that's necessarily decided in a boardroom. Although I'm sure whatever keeps the merchandising going is fine by the people upstairs. I think it's they're trying to find a way to tell these stories that people are going to respond to, and one of the things that you're seeing now is that because we're in the golden age of TV, the second or third or whatever golden age of TV. TV, where we're coming off of these shows that are like acclaimed and a lot of times considered superior to motion pictures, but that you nothing can be completely safe, or there's no danger, there's no spark to it to keep things like in our subconscious. So my opinion with that is like, yeah, it's stuff like that's going to happen. But if it feels like it's part of the story that needs to be told, if it feels organic to that universe, I'm okay with it.
How many are we going to see a Star Wars movie every year now?
Forever. No, I'm serious. Star Wars will barring we find a way to annihilate ourselves, which is possible, always a possibility.
But that's the only thing that'll stop it.
That's the only thing that'll stop it, because it's a phenomenon. It's recognized as a religion in parts of Europe.
But will that make it not a phenomenon? I mean, obviously,
that's
it'll dilute it.
But I mean, I could say something controversial right now, but I won't. You could say that about several religions. Just like it's everywhere. Everybody knows about it. Surely that's going to burn itself out. Well, no. So I honestly, I'm okay with the fact that it will continue long after we are all gone.
That long.
I have no idea where it will go. I feel like the only franchise that is really set up for that a movie a year thing is the Duneverse, the Dune books by Frank Herbert.
Right.
Because those cover about 35,000 years across the 16 or 17 books that are, and they still put out a new Dune book every few years or so, because his son is working from these insanely detailed notes that he left. So something like that spans 35,000 years, you could do that conceivably with that. Like with Star Wars, eventually they're going to hit a point where they're like, we're going to have to expand this. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But there is extant. It could happen. It could easily.
All right, let's take a look at the movies that are up for Best Picture. We'll start there. When we start discussing movies of 2015, we'll just start with the movies that were nominated for Best Picture. And what do you think of the crop of movies that were nominated this year?
It's pretty good. There are a few omissions that bother me. Carol should be part of that list. That's the one that stings. But there's not any of the nominees for Best Picture. There's not a one of them that is just a terrible movie. There's not one that just seems like a sop to certain voting blocks, or just that was a studio saying okay, everyone who works for us who votes needs to vote for this. There's nothing that feels completely undeserved. There's some that are just all right, but there's nothing that's just well, that's ridiculous. There's nothing that inspires that kind of indignation that happens sometimes.
And I think we can show the list. I want to show the list here, yes. Mad Max kind of surprised people, but it's a really good movie.
It's the best one. It's the best one of all of those.
So really? So in
absolutely.
Your opinion, it's the best movie?
Yeah. Well, look at the rest of them. It's it covers a lot of ground, tells interesting stories. Mad Max Fury Road is the fourth film in a series. Can you name any other series where the fourth film is not only expanding worlds, blowing people's minds, showing what can be done, but also directed by a guy in his 70s and edited by his wife in her 70s. That's insane. And it's creative. I could go on about that, but yeah, no, Fury Road is easily the best of them.
All right, for me, I like Spotlight.
Spotlight's great.
Of course, about investigative reporting.
A professional broadcast journalist who loves Spotlight. Yeah. I'm shocked.
I love that.
It's a great film, though. It is a great film.
And so, you look at this list here. What do you think? What do you think wins?
It's a good question. It's been all the various other awards have been sort of spreading it around. There's a lot of possibilities.
Revenant got the most nominations.
Yeah, Revenant got the most nominations.
And Spotlight has won some big awards.
Yeah, and it's the only thing that I could see hurting Spotlight is the fact that it's distributed by Open Road, which is a company that is basically, it's a joint venture between Regal Cinemas and AMC. So that it's sort of they're just why don't we distribute our own stuff? So they did. So that's the kind of thing that other exhibitors might just be. But
so that's the politics of it.
Yeah. There's always politics behind this, for often ridiculous reasons. But Spotlight definitely has crossed over. All of them do. I mean, that's the thing about that list that's so impressive, is that like every one of those films has found a very devoted audience, and you know, a lot of times one person can respond very positively to a lot of those films. It's a very strong crop of things, and I would imagine for Academy voters it's probably a very difficult decision trying to figure out, you know, exactly what's the one. But
all right, we have to take a break. And then I want to come back and give people some ideas. We'll take that list again and maybe show some scenes from a few movies. Movies they could, if they hadn't seen it, they could rent it. You know, just this would be a great movie at home on a cold night like this. All right, we'll take a break. Be back right after this.